The underestimation, the Grand Assembly Hall floated in the neutral zone between three major star clusters, a magnificent structure built from crystallized starlight and quantum-locked metal. Inside its vast chamber, representatives from 850 civilizations gathered for an event that occurred only once every decade, the Universal Coalition's Comprehensive Threat Assessment. Dr. Elena Reeves, humanity's chief ambassador, sat in the upper galleries where newer and less significant species were placed. She had been part of the galactic community for nearly 4 decades now, ever since humanity's first faster-than-light vessel had stumbled into Coalition space. In that time, she had watched Earth grow from a curious newcomer into a respected trading partner. Humans were known for their art, their music, their literature, and their seemingly endless capacity for commerce and cultural exchange. The assessment chamber hummed with anticipation as the central adjudicator, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, began announcing the rankings. These rankings determined everything in galactic politics: trade privileges, territorial rights, representation on key councils, and most importantly, who could make demands of whom. The adjudicator's voice resonated through translation devices embedded in every seat. The Craventhi Dominion held position number 1, an insectoid species whose fleets numbered in the thousands and whose territorial holdings spanned 200 systems. The Morphidian Collective claimed position 2, silicon-based life forms who could survive in the vacuum of space and whose military doctrine had never been defeated in 3 centuries. The Valorian Empire sat at position 4, reptilian warriors standing nearly 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating that could withstand most conventional weapons. Helena listened as species after species was ranked, each position announced with meticulous detail about military capability, territorial holdings, and potential threat to galactic stability. She knew what was coming. She had seen the preliminary reports. When the adjudicator finally reached the lower rankings, its tone shifted slightly, becoming almost dismissive. Position 842, it announced. Species designation human. Classification Class 7, negligible threat. Military assessment indicates limited capability beyond basic system defense. No significant fleet presence. No territorial aggression patterns. Cultural output substantial, military capacity minimal. Recommended status for trade and cultural exchange only. Threat to galactic stability essentially 0. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel exactly, but the kind of amused condescension one might show to a child playing soldier with wooden sticks. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. Beside her, Commander Jackson Torres, officially listed as her military attaché, but holding a far more significant role, remained perfectly still. His face showed nothing, but Elena knew him well enough to see the calculation behind his eyes. They had both known this assessment was coming. They had both prepared for what would follow. After the ceremony concluded, the customary diplomatic reception began. These events were supposed to foster goodwill and cooperation between species. In practice, they were opportunities for the powerful to network and for the weak to be ignored. Elena made her way through the crowd, noting how delegates from major powers moved past her without acknowledgement. She had experienced worse slights in her years of diplomatic service. What concerned her more was the Valorian delegation moving purposefully in her direction. Supreme Commander Zalf approached with 4 of his officers flanking him. The Valorians were impressive specimens, their scales gleaming under the artificial lights, their movements precise and military. Zalf himself was a decorated warrior, having personally led campaigns that conquered 17 worlds before the Coalition had absorbed the Valorian Empire as a member state. Ambassador Reeves, his translator, rendered his sibilant speech into precise Coalition standard. I wish to discuss a matter of territorial interest with your species. Elena kept her expression neutral and professional. Of course, Commander. How may humanity assist the Valorian Empire? Assist, Zalth's translator captured what might have been amusement. No, Ambassador, we are here to inform you of a decision that has been made. The Empire has been reviewing territorial efficiency in this sector of space. We have noted that 3 of your colony worlds, Novaterra, Kepler's Rest, and Dawn's Edge, occupy strategic positions that would be more effectively administered under Valorian control. These worlds represent nearly 12 million human lives, Elena said carefully. They are thriving colonies with established governments and populations. Precisely why we are offering generous terms, South replied. The Empire will provide transportation and resettlement assistance. Your colonists will be relocated at our expense to less strategically valuable systems. We are prepared to offer compensation for infrastructure and personal property losses. This is most generous considering your species ranking. Elena felt ice spreading through her chest, but years of diplomatic training kept her voice steady. Those worlds are sovereign human territory, Commander. They are not available for transfer under any terms. Everything is available under the right terms, Ambassador Zalf said. The Empire has authorized 45 standard days for your government to consider our proposal. We understand your democratic processes require time. We are patient. And if humanity declines this proposal, Elena asked, though she already knew the answer, then we would be required to educate your species on the realities of galactic politics, South replied. Nothing personal, you understand. Simply the natural order. The strong expand, the weak accommodate. Your species ranking reflects your current position in this order. We suggest you accept reality. Elena watched as Zalf and his officers moved away, joining a cluster of delegates from other powerful civilizations. She noticed several species glancing in her direction, then quickly looking away. No one would intervene. Humanity had trading partners and cordial relationships. But when it came to standing against the 4th most powerful military in the galaxy, Earth stood alone. Commander Torres appeared at her elbow, carrying 2 drinks that neither of them would consume. He had been monitoring the conversation through her security feed. They are not bluffing, he said quietly. Valorian battle doctrine is overwhelming force applied without hesitation. If we refuse, they will attack. I know, Elena replied. Send the report to Earth. Full quantum encryption. Priority Alpha. The Unified Council needs to make the call, but we both know what they will say. Torres nodded slightly. Protocol Safeguard. After 40 years, we finally need it. I hoped we never would, Elena said softly. But hoping is not the same as being unprepared. Asterisk, the message reached Earth within minutes through quantum-entangled communication channels. The Unified Council, representing every nation and colonial territory under human control, convened in emergency session. President Jonathan Cross presided over the meeting from the council chamber in Geneva, with representatives appearing via hologram from across human space. The debate was brief. 40 years of peaceful expansion had not made humanity naive. They had watched how galactic politics operated. They had seen powerful species make demands of weaker ones. They had always known this moment might come. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender 3 worlds and 12 million citizens to Valorian intimidation. Ambassador Reeves was authorized to reject the demand and to activate Protocol Safeguard if necessary. Commander Torres received separate orders through military channels. The orders were simple. Prepare for war, but do not fire the first shot. Humanity would not be the aggressor, but they would finish what others started. Asterisk Elena spent the next 6 weeks in intensive negotiations with Valorian representatives. She offered trade concessions, technology sharing, joint development of disputed space, mining rights, and a dozen other compromises. The Valorians refused everything. They wanted the worlds, nothing less. It had become a matter of prestige. Supreme Commander Zalf had made his demand publicly. If he backed down, the Valorian Empire would appear weak. And the Valorians had not built their reputation by appearing weak. On the 43rd day, Elena transmitted humanity's final response. The message was brief and clear. The Unified Council of Humanity has reviewed the Valorian Empire's proposal. We respectfully but firmly decline. Our colonies are sovereign human territory and are not available for transfer under any terms or conditions. We remain committed to peaceful resolution and open to diplomatic alternatives that respect the rights and self-determination of all human populations. The Valorian response arrived within 2 hours. Your decision is acknowledged. The Empire will take necessary action to secure its legitimate territorial interests. This outcome is regrettable, but required. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Asterisk. On the 45th day, the Valorian Second Armada jumped into the Nova Terra system. 180 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Their fleet included 12 dreadnoughts, 38 heavy cruisers, and 130 support vessels. It was enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag. They had not come to negotiate. Supreme Commander Zalf commanded the Armada from his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, a vessel 3 kilometers long bristling with weapons. He broadcast on all frequencies, confident that this display of power would achieve immediate surrender. Human colonists of Nova Terra, this is Supreme Commander Zalf of the Valorian Empire. This world has been claimed by right of superior force and strategic necessity. You have 24 hours to begin evacuation procedures. Civilian transport will be provided. Compliance will ensure your safety. Resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming retaliation. Choose wisely for the sake of your families. On Nova Terra's surface, in the colonial capital's command center, Governor Maria Santos listened to the ultimatum with an expression that mixed determination with something that might have been anticipation. She was 58 years old, a former naval officer who had helped establish this colony 22 years ago. Around her, her command staff waited for orders. They were all military veterans, though their official positions were civilian. That had been part of protocol safeguard from the beginning. Send a response to Commander Zalf, Maria said. Tell him that Nova Terra is sovereign human territory, and we will not abandon our homes. Tell him that if he attacks, he will learn something the Universal Coalition failed to mention in their threat assessment. And then activate Defense Grid Nightfall. Her Chief of Security, Commander Robert Chun, formerly of Earth's Special Operations Division, allowed himself a slight smile. Defense Grid Nightfall, activated on your authority, Governor. All personnel to stations. Time to show them what they missed across Nova Terra's orbital space. 300 satellites that the Valorians had cataloged as civilian communication and weather. Monitoring infrastructure began to change. Power cores that had been operating at minimal capacity for 20 years surged to full military output. Sensor arrays shifted frequency and resolution, becoming weapons-grade targeting systems. Panels that appeared to be solar collectors retracted, revealing missile tubes and directed energy weapons. And on the planet's surface, in facilities that the Valorians' intelligence had dismissed as mining operations and agricultural complexes, 2 million colonists began donning combat armor and checking weapons they had trained with every year, but prayed they would never need to use. The Valorian fleet moved into position, confident and methodical. They had done this before. They knew how it would end. But Supreme Commander Zalf was about to learn that humanity's 40 years of peace had not been weakness. It had been preparation. And the price for that lesson would be paid in Valorian blood in burning ships. Asterisk. The Reckoning Supreme Commander Zalf reviewed the tactical displays aboard the Eternal Dominance with absolute confidence. His intelligence officers had provided comprehensive analysis of Nova Terra's defenses. The colony possessed standard civilian infrastructure, a handful of orbital satellites for communication and weather monitoring, and perhaps a small security force adequate for handling pirates or civil disturbances. Nothing that could threaten a proper military fleet. The Second Armada held position just outside weapons range, giving the humans their allotted 24 hours to see reason and begin evacuation. Zalf expected panic, desperate pleas for more time, perhaps emotional broadcasts from colonial leaders begging for mercy. Instead, he received silence. Then, as the deadline expired, he received a message that changed everything. "This is Governor Maria Santos of Nova Terra. Commander Zalf, you have made a grave miscalculation. You looked at our peaceful record and assumed weakness. You reviewed our infrastructure and saw only civilian installations. You studied our military and found it minimal. All of this is true, but you failed to ask the most important question. Why would a species with humanity's history choose peace? The answer is simple. We choose peace because we know the true cost of war. We know it better than you ever will. You are about to receive an education in human military doctrine. I suggest you pay close attention. You will not get a second lesson." Zalf felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, uncertainty. He dismissed it immediately. These were humans, ranked 842. They were merchants and artists, not warriors. "Target the capital city's industrial sector," he ordered. "Demonstration strike. Minimal casualties. Show them we are serious." 6 Valorian destroyers moved forward, their plasma cannons charging. They launched a coordinated barrage of 73 missiles, each one capable of leveling several city blocks. It was supposed to be overwhelming and terrifying, a display of power that would break human resolve. Instead, it became the first indication that everything Valorian intelligence believed about humanity was catastrophically wrong. Nova Terra's orbital satellites activated in perfect synchronization. What the Valorians had dismissed as civilian infrastructure revealed its true nature. Kinetic interceptors launched at velocities that should have been impossible for commercial hardware, their acceleration curves indicating military-grade propulsion systems. Directed energy weapons, disguised as communication arrays, reached out across thousands of kilometers with precision that exceeded Valorian targeting capabilities. Point defense networks that supposedly did not exist created overlapping fields of fire that turned space into a death trap for incoming missiles. Of the 73 missiles the Valorians launched, 68 were destroyed before reaching the atmosphere. The remaining 5 had their guidance systems scrambled by electronic warfare, so sophisticated that Valorian sensors could not even detect it. They impacted in an uninhabited desert region, creating impressive explosions that harmed no one. On the Eternal Dominance Bridge, silence replaced confidence. Zalf stared at the tactical display, trying to comprehend what had just occurred. "Analysis," he demanded, his voice sharp with anger and confusion. "Commander, the human defensive network is significantly more capable than our intelligence indicated," his tactical officer reported, choosing words carefully. "Their satellites are military grade, possibly exceeding our own technology in several categories. They possess weapon systems we did not detect in preliminary scans. Their coordination suggests artificial intelligence integration, far beyond what we believed humans had developed. How is this possible?" Zalf asked, but he was speaking more to himself than expecting an answer. "Our intelligence was incomplete, Commander," the tactical officer said. "These humans have been preparing for this scenario. Every piece of civilian infrastructure has dual military purpose. They built their colonies as fortresses and disguised them as peaceful settlements." Zalf felt the first stirrings of doubt, but 40 years of military success pushed it aside. The Second Armada still possessed overwhelming numerical superiority. 180 warships against a few hundred satellites. On paper, it was no contest. All ships, combat formation, he ordered. Prepare for full assault. We will overwhelm their defenses through concentrated firepower. Launch everything. Asterisk the Valorian fleet advanced, and the true battle began. But wars are not fought on paper, and the humans had spent 40 years studying every conflict in their long and bloody history. They understood something the Valorians did not. Superior numbers mean nothing if you cannot effectively deploy them. The satellites moved, and Zalth realized with growing horror that they were not fixed installations. They maneuvered with frightening agility, their trajectories calculated by artificial intelligence systems that adapted faster than Valorian gunners could track. When the fleet opened fire, trying to clear orbital space, more than half their shots missed entirely. The satellites did not fight like stationary platforms. They fought like fighter craft, weaving through incoming fire while maintaining perfect coordination. Asterisk. And then the satellites returned fire with devastating efficiency. Invisible lasers in the vacuum slashed across the darkness, targeting not the Valorians' thick armor, but their sensor arrays, communication antennas, and weapons tracking systems. It was surgical precision, aimed at blinding and crippling rather than destroying. Kinetic projectiles, simple dense metal slugs accelerated to incredible velocities, punched through energy shields designed to stop plasma and particle beams. One destroyer took a kinetic round through its forward sensor cluster. The projectile continued through the ship, exiting through the engine compartment and leaving the vessel tumbling end over end, its crew screaming as artificial gravity failed. Asterisk. They are targeting our systems instead of our hulls, the tactical officer shouted over the chaos erupting across the bridge. They are trying to disable us, not destroy us. Why? Because disabled ships cannot fight but can still surrender, answered Zalth, and he felt cold realization spreading through him. They are fighting a war of precision, not destruction. This is not how primitive species fight. This is sophisticated military doctrine. Then how do we counter it? His second officer demanded. Zalth had no answer, because he had never faced an enemy like this. The Valorians fought through overwhelming force and intimidation. They expected enemies to either flee or be crushed. The humans were doing neither. The battle raged for 8 hours. The Valorian Second Armada destroyed 117 human satellites through sheer weight of fire, but the cost was staggering. 4 destroyers were completely disabled, drifting wrecks with no power and minimal life support. 9 cruisers had suffered critical damage to their command and control systems, effectively removing them from the battle. And then the ground-based defenses joined the fight. Nova Terra's surface seemed to erupt as hidden installations revealed themselves. What Valorians had catalogued as mining operations were actually missile silos containing hundreds of long-range interceptors. Communications towers were electromagnetic railguns, capable of launching projectiles into orbit at speeds that made them nearly impossible to intercept. The colony's 3 moons, which supposedly hosted only research stations, lit up with weapons signatures as platforms that had been hidden for 2 decades activated simultaneously. They militarized their entire system. Zalth's executive officer said, his voice edged with something approaching fear. Every structure, every installation, every moon. It is all military. They planned this from the beginning. Zalth felt control of the situation slipping away, but pride and military doctrine demanded he continue. The Valorian Empire did not retreat. The Empire did not accept defeat from inferior species. Commit all reserves, he ordered. Every ship presses the attack. Break through their defenses and establish orbital superiority. I want landing forces ready to deploy the moment we secure orbital space. For 2 hours, it appeared that sheer determination might succeed. The Second Armada threw everything at Nova Terra's defenses. Plasma barrages that could melt continents. kinetic bombardments that struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons, missile swarms that numbered in the thousands. The human defenses began taking losses. Satellites were destroyed faster than their automated systems could compensate. Ground installations were targeted and eliminated. For a terrifying period, it seemed the colony might fall. But then Earth's response arrived, and the Valorians learned that Nova Terra's defenses were only the beginning. The United Earth Defense Force had mobilized the moment Valorian ships entered human space. Commander Jackson Torres, now wearing the rank of admiral that he had held in reserve for decades, commanded humanity's first fleet from the bridge of the UEDS Indomitable. The fleet numbered 68 ships, less than half the Valorian force. But these were not the light patrol craft and converted cargo haulers the Universal Coalition had catalogued. These were copper warships built in hidden shipyards, armed with weapons humanity had spent 40 years perfecting. They had studied every war their species had ever fought. They had analyzed every tactic, every strategy, every innovation that had ever been used to win against superior numbers. All ships, stealth approach, Torres ordered. Use the debris field from the orbital engagement as cover. Silent running protocols until we reach optimal firing range. Target packages are uploaded to all vessels. Fire only on my command. The human fleet moved like ghosts through the void. They possessed something the Valorians had not anticipated. True stealth technology. Not invisibility, which remained impossible, but heat management, emission control, and hull coatings that made them nearly undetectable until they were exactly where they wanted to be. The Valorians had never developed such technology because they had never needed to hide. They were predators who announced their presence and overwhelmed their prey. Supreme. Commander Zalth received the warning when the human fleet was already among his ships, having penetrated his formation without being detected. Multiple contacts at close range, his sensor officer screamed, "Commander, we have hostile vessels inside our defensive perimeter. How did they penetrate our screens?" Zalth demanded, but he already knew the answer. The humans had deceived them again. Admiral Torres's voice suddenly echoed across every Valorian communication channel, a deliberate demonstration of humanity's electronic warfare capabilities. "This is Admiral Jackson Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. You attacked our colony. You threatened our civilians. You assumed we were weak because we chose peace. Now you learn the cost of that assumption. All ships, engage at will. The UEDS Indomitable and its sister ships opened fire at ranges so close that energy shields were useless." Humanity had studied the Valorians for 15 years since first contact. They knew every weakness in Valorian armor, every blind spot in their sensor coverage, every flaw in their shield geometry. Human destroyers, which the Valorians had assumed were heavy cruisers based on their mass, revealed their true purpose. They were missile platforms carrying fusion-pumped laser warheads. When these missiles detonated, they created focused beams of coherent energy that could slice through multiple ships in a single shot. Swarm drones poured from human carriers like angry insects. Each drone was small and expendable, but they carried shaped charges designed specifically to penetrate Valorian armor at weak points that human intelligence had identified. Valorian point defense systems tried to stop them, but there were too many moving too fast in too many directions. The drones coordinated through artificial intelligence networks that operated at speeds biological minds could not match. Human cruisers used their smaller size and superior maneuverability to herd Valorian vessels into kill zones where multiple human ships could concentrate fire. They sacrificed drones and missiles to create debris fields that blocked escape routes. They targeted engines and command. Bridges with surgical precision, learned from centuries of naval warfare on Earth's oceans. The Battle of Nova. Terra turned from assault into nightmare for the Valorian Second Armada. They were caught between the colony's defenses and Torres's fleet, being attacked from two sides by an enemy that fought nothing like they expected. The humans used tactics the Valorians had never encountered. They employed electronic warfare that turned Valorian systems against themselves. They broadcast false sensor readings that caused Valorian ships to fire on each other. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting casualty counts and showing footage of burning Valorian vessels on frequencies the enemy could not block. After 19 hours of continuous combat, Supreme Commander Zalth faced a reality no Valorian commander had confronted in 3 centuries. His fleet was losing, catastrophically. He had lost 63 ships destroyed completely, with another 42 damaged beyond combat effectiveness. His casualties exceeded 70%. The humans had lost 11 ships and taken heavy damage to 19 more, but they were still fighting with undiminished coordination and determination. By any standard of military analysis, the Second Armada had been routed. Signal retreat, Zalth said, the words tasting like poison. All remaining ships withdraw to jump coordinates. We are leaving this system. The remains of the Second Armada limped away from Nova Terra. The humans let them go, not out of mercy, but out of strategic calculation. Admiral Torres watched the Valorian retreat on his tactical display. Message from Governor Santos, his communications officer, reported. She says thank you and welcome to Nova Terra, Admiral. Tell her we are honored to help, Torres replied. And tell her to prepare for more visitors. The galaxy is watching this battle. They just learned something important about humanity. And not everyone will be pleased. Across the Universal Coalition's monitoring network, 849 species had indeed watched the entire engagement. The emergency session of the Grand Assembly convened within 12 hours. The chamber that had laughed at humanity's ranking now hummed with urgent, worried conversation. Ambassador Elena Reeves stood at the human delegation's podium, no longer seated in the upper galleries. The Coalition had granted her floor access for this emergency session. She looked out at the assembled species and saw fear where there had been contempt just weeks ago. Asterisk. Esteemed members of the Coalition, Elena began, her voice calm but carrying clearly through the chamber. You classified my species as negligible threat. You ranked us 842 out of 850 civilizations. You are wrong, but not in the way you think. We are not harmless. We never were. But we chose peace because we know the cost of war better than most of you ever will. You mistook that choice for weakness. The Valorian Empire made the same mistake, and they paid with 63 ships and thousands of lives. The chamber fell silent. Elena continued, her words measured and deliberate. Humanity wants peace. We want trade, cultural exchange, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. But we will not surrender our worlds to intimidation. We will not bow to threats simply because another species possesses a higher ranking. And if you bring war to our homes, you will discover what 10,000 years of human conflict have taught us. We know how to win wars. We simply hoped we would never have to prove it. Supreme Commander Zalth, watching the broadcast from a medical facility where his injuries were being treated, felt something he had never experienced in 40 years of military service. Shame. The Valorian Empire had been humiliated by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Worse, they deserved that humiliation. They had attacked without truly understanding their enemy. They had relied on rankings and assumptions rather than intelligence and analysis. But shame quickly transformed into rage. This could not stand. The Empire would not accept this defeat. Zalth began composing messages to the War Council. They would mobilize everything. They would commit their entire military, if necessary. They would crush humanity before this upstart species could become a true threat to Valorian dominance. What Zalth did not know What he could not know, because pride blinded him, was that by choosing escalation over acceptance, he was sealing not just his own fate, but potentially the fate of his entire civilization. Humanity had shown restraint at Nova Terra, allowing survivors to retreat. If the Valorians forced a larger war, humanity would show them something far worse than military capability. They would show them total commitment to survival. And when humans committed to survival, they did not stop until every threat was eliminated. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's peaceful 40 years had not been their true nature. It had been their choice. And when that choice was taken from them, what emerged was something far more dangerous than any ranking system could measure. Asterisk.